Hey, what's going on? MJ Lennon here, streaming two ways today. We are recording this for the Fitness Business Life podcast, and we're also streaming live into the ECA Facebook group. Today, I've got my former client, now former student, now mastermind member, Christina McCormack, on joining me. So for anyone that doesn't know Christina, she has just recently opened up her own small group personal training facility that specializes in working with females. Christina left ECA 2 and a bit years ago, and today she's going to share her story on, I suppose, where she was beforehand in her corporate gig and what led to that, and then sort of the journey since leaving ECA. Christina, welcome to the podcast stroke Facebook group.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Christina, for anyone that doesn't know you, what was going on before you moved into the fitness industry? How did you move into the corporate gig? What was the process that led up to that?
So I never really knew what I wanted to do. Like most people, when you're in sixth year, it's very young to try and determine the rest of your life. So I was always quite academic in school and just focused on achieving my grades, kind of. Whenever I went to think about uni and going down that route, I was so unsure about what I wanted to do. So I just went with math and thought I'll start with that. And then I moved out, with the girls and didn't go to uni. So failed math miserably.
Right.
And it was the first time I'd ever not done well academically, and I freaked out a bit. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to do something a wee bit easier than maths. And I decided to do business economics.
Right.
Because to me, then I was like, that'll branch up or leave me open to loads of kind of different jobs in the corporate world. So I did that. And then I started working in Dublin for a year. Hated it.
Right. And you got the
yeah, so went to Dublin for a year and then decided I didn't want to do that. Dragged my daddy to go to be a firefighter with me because I knew I was very active in things then, but just wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Then I had this idea that I wanted to help people. So that kind of started right at the very start. Then I spent a lot more time in corporate, around working my way up. So obviously I never became a firefighter.
What happened there? What went wrong?
I just thought it's very heavily male dominated and I'm quite petite. So I just thought it was not going to fit, to be honest.
Did you have to do any of the any of the physical tests or anything like this, or did
no? I went to one of the open days and I was quite well paid even back then in the job that I was in, and I would be taking a significant cut if I wanted to go and move into being a firefighter and starting off. I think it's ridiculously low wage. Yeah. And I was so young that I had just started coming into money and I didn't want to give that up at the time. So I stayed in corporate, excuse me, came home from Dublin, stayed in corporate. Honestly, it just always felt like something was missing. I climbed the ladder really quickly, was always getting promotions, getting pay raises, always like quite praised for being such a hard worker, and it just wasn't enough. I just was always like, is this my life? I can't do that.
Yeah, because I remember actually speaking to you before you signed up for the PT course with us, and this was a big area of friction for you? Because you were well, you were getting rewarded financially and stuff for the job, but I could tell on the phone that it wasn't like fulfilling you, even though it was financially rewarding at the time. And I got the sense that even over the phone there was something missing, because you're just like it just doesn't feel right. And I actually really remember that conversation as well. At what point did it become real for you that you were like, you know what, I'm going to try this coaching gig? Or so not even try the coaching gig, let's just dip my toes further into the industry, because you were pretty active, you were training in gyms and everything else. When did you start toying with the idea that this could be a possibility?
So I would say I had thought about it for years. It had always been in the back of my mind, but I also never thought about it seriously enough for it to be my full-time career. I had thought about doing it on the side. Whenever I first started with my first PT, I think I was only maybe 21 at the time, 21. And he had said to me, you would be really good at this. You should do this. And I was like, no. In my head, I was almost a bit snobby about it, because I was thinking, I'm making really good money. Why would I be a PT?
Yeah.
Like, that was kind of my thought process about it. And I need a career. I can't just be a PT, because at that point it was very much commercial was the only thing, and I couldn't see anything else than being on the gym floor forever. And to me, I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like, I couldn't do that as a full-time job. And I floated the idea around with my family. My dad is a businessman, and he was like, 100% do it on the side, like make a wee bit of extra money, cash in hand in your pocket. But no one ever thought of it as a real career. Plus, I was the first, so I'm child number 4, and I was the first to kind of be big into academics. So for me to be big into academics and then go, no, I'm going to be a PT, would have been, everybody was like, what? So then I started seeing my now partner, who is also a coach. And once we moved in together, I just seen how much freedom he had in terms of his days. And it was lockdown, or maybe just before lockdown, I think. And it started annoying me. He was coming home, and I was in the house all day doing like my job, working from home, and he was coming home being like, well, what's the crack? And I was like, nothing. He's like, what have you been doing? And I'm like, I've been sitting here. I've been sitting at this desk all day. Whereas he was saying, do you know, I was coaching and then I went for a coffee, and I was like, actually, I'm going to punch you. Even if he had been saying, you know, I'm going to be home at 12, and then he wasn't home until 1 or 2. By the time he came in, I was like, where have you been? Because I've just been sitting here and you've been out having the best time. So it kind of got to the point where I was like, God, I don't want to be this person, and this is not how I don't want to have to depend on someone else for my happiness. I need to make my own life fulfilling enough, so I'm not clutching on to someone else to bring me some sort of happiness. And I saw the amount of happiness that he had and fulfillment from his job, and I knew I could do it. Then I started taking it a bit more seriously, and then we had a conversation about it, and he was very supportive about it. And it was the first kind of relationship I've had where someone was like encouraging me to be better and doing what I wanted to do and not trying to keep me small. So it was a bit of a difference for me. And then when I brought the idea to my family, my mum and dad were like, what? Are you insane? My sister was like, 100% do it. She's the most supportive person on the planet. And she said, you've been talking about this for so long. Like, you either need to do it or you need to stop talking about it, because I can't listen to it. So then I just had a conversation with you. And even then, I wasn't bought in at the time. I wasn't sure if I was going to do it. But once we had our conversation and you kind of put it forward, in the sense of you don't have to do anything with this. Like, worst case scenario, you just learn something more about something that you love. And I think that was the big thing that held me back for such a long time. I get quite overwhelmed quite easily, as you know. So me thinking I have like a good job and I have a mortgage and I have a car to pay for and I'm just gonna change my career tomorrow, and what the fuck, how am I gonna cope? And what if I want to have kids? And I remember having this conversation with you on the phone and saying, but I'm a woman, and if I want to have kids and then I'm self-employed, and how am I going to coach? And you were like, whoa, relax. Like, this is our first conversation. Hold up. I think once I took it a bit more like, whatever.
Yeah, makes sense. I remember you it was actually, I think you said for the first few weeks of the course, because you'd done the part-time course and you were still like on the fence about whether or not it was for you. Because, you know, anytime I speak to people straight up, and this was refreshing for me as well, I ask people, so when did you realize you made the right decision? And they're like, oh, straight away, first day. You were like, no, first day. I was freaking out, still didn't know whether or not I was going to continue on, like all of that. So like, was there, when exactly did you realize that, okay, this might be a thing?
It was definitely not the first day. And I think that was what made me a bit nervous too, that any testimonials I had watched, everyone's like, first day, best decision ever. My first day, I was like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, this is not, I was surrounded by a lot of different people, a lot of people who were outgoing, people who came together. And I actually don't much like socializing. So when I got there and I had to, there was all these people who I didn't know, I just felt so out of my comfort zone. And I was just like, what am I doing here? So the first couple of days, and then, which would have been a couple of weeks because we were only doing, I did part-time, so it was only 2 days a week. Yeah, I just really, really wasn't sure. Then it takes me a wee minute to get comfortable. Once I'm comfortable, I thrive. So once I kind of got a wee bit more comfortable, I really decided, had a word with myself and was like, I can really run with this here, and I can really use this, if nothing else, as an opportunity to grow. And I pushed myself so much. Like, I just used it as an opportunity. Like, there was no one else there. I asked every single question that I wanted to. I learned as much as I could. And as I started getting into the practical element, the coaching element a bit more, I just started thinking, this actually might be for me. Even when I qualified, I still wasn't sure because I had always wanted to do groups. And even that made me feel a wee bit out of my depths. But I suppose adopting that mindset of taking everything as it comes rather than having to make all these big, massive decisions.
Yeah, it's not an either or, it's just it's a process.
It did take me a while before I thought, no, I've made the right decision in doing this. I would say probably a couple of weeks. And I don't think there was a moment. I think it was gradual for me, where I started to reconfirm that thought of, I've made the right call here. Like, I belong here.
All beliefs are evidence-based. So you guys, it was a pretty fun group. You were on. So Declan was in your group, Aideen, Aaron, Nathan, Dylan, all that crew, they were all in there. So then what happened whenever you finished? Did you start coaching people straight away, or did you, like, what was going on there?
Yeah, so I actually went from 0 to 100, as in 1 minute I didn't want to coach, and the next minute I was looking for a facility, if you remember.
Yes.
So once I set my mind to something, that's me set. So I had to get a facility there and then, and nothing else would do. But that didn't work out. So I was looking for a facility, and my partner coaches in Momentum, in a small group facility. So I had spoke to him and one of the other guys who owns it, and he said, listen, we don't coach here on a Wednesday and a Saturday, so you can do that for a while until you get on your feet. So I did do that, but I wanted to get out of that very quickly because I didn't like feeling like I was relying on someone else, and the feeling of that it could be taken away at any point because they don't do Wednesdays and Saturdays at that time, but who's to say next week they aren't going to? So I did start coaching straight away. I struggled a bit, I think, at the start, and this is what I always tell whenever like you or Andrew sends coaches my way, who have just started out. My biggest lesson was that I thought people were going to flock to me, and they don't. So I had been working with my social media the whole time, and I really did just throw myself into it because I used to care a lot about what other people think of me and worry about things like that. When I went all in on coaching, I was just like, I don't give a fuck about this anymore. And it really changed me a lot. But I put a lot of graft in my social media as I was going through the course. So by the time I got to the end, and that was Carl who pushed me to do that, because he was like, you can't just get to the end and say, I'm a personal trainer now. Start building it up as you go along so people know what you're doing. So then whenever I got to the end, I put out a poll, like, would you be interested? Like 30 odd people voted. I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And then like 3 sign-ups or something. Which is really good.
No,
starting. But I started coaching out of and I wanted to do groups. So I ended up, I think, with 8 people or something when I started, and split it over 2 sessions per week. I was still working full-time in my corporate job as well, and found it really hard. I almost forget sometimes how difficult I found it, because when you're not in it, you forget. But I remember like spending time crying and being like, I just don't want to be in this job anymore, and I just want to leave. And Carl trying to talk me around and saying, listen, like, it'll all come, just be patient. But even a couple of months, he was saying, like 4 months or something. And I was like, 4 months? You're telling me I have to stay here for 4 months? I can't. So it did feel a bit overwhelming at the time. And the job that I was in was quite demanding as well. So I was a project manager. So it was a struggle to balance both. And then I ended up finding a spot in another gym. And I moved there, which gave me much more freedom. And I started to do small group PT in the morning. The gym wasn't being used until 9:30. So I ran my own small group Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, 6 and 7 a.m.s, and then flying up the road to start work at 9, working 9 to 6 or 9 to 7, trying to deal with clients and post on social media and do everything in between. And it was a lot, but that's how that kind of went.
When did you decide it was time to leave the full-time corporate gig?
So I didn't. That one kind of cracked up upon me. So I know, obviously, we had kept in contact after I left the course, and I always said you were so good to me, like just any advice that I needed or just checking in to see. I always felt like I had quite a good connection with you and with Andrew as well, and you always were there to be pushing me on, and you were very much like, why are you still in your job? Every single time we had a conversation. So I had that on one end, and then on the other end was, like my parents saying, you can't leave your job yet. You can't leave your job until you're making a certain amount. Or what about security? What about this? So I'm still off a bit, but I knew that I wanted to buy a house. So I owned an apartment at the time, and I knew I wanted to buy a house. So for me, it was about waiting until I got the house,
Yep.
and then I could leave my job once I had the security of the house, rather than having to be self-employed and then wait another 3-4 years until I got the house. And I know at the time, I think this is what I say to people too, whenever they're talking about, the conflict of being in a job, a full-time job, and doing coaching on the side, when the right time to leave is. I think you know yourself.
Yeah.
So you know your circumstance better than anyone. So as much as you were on the outside looking in at me and saying, you're ready to leave, to me, I knew what I wanted. I knew that I wanted the house and that bit of security. And I was like, I'm going to stay until I get it. And then I'm just going to go. So I got the house, and then it was all agreed. And I had a lot going on in my personal life at the time. So I took a step back from my job and I started coaching full time.
Yes.
And it just brought me so much happiness. Like, I can't even explain it. It, at a time whenever I was really, really struggling with everything that was going on around me, it was the one constant and the one thing that I could put my whole focus into and my whole drive into. And it genuinely kept me afloat. And it was then my mum had seen me and she was like, what the hell? Like, you're so good at this. Because she had heard me on calls chatting to people, and she had seen how much it was bringing me mentally, and was like, you should do this. So I took a bit of a step back from work, and then I left my job and just went all in. And to be honest, it didn't seem like a massive thing. It seemed more gradual at the time.
Yeah, just incrementally making changes, and yeah, everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So you you moved into the coaching role full time, and I think still in the back of your mind, having spoken to you several times and knowing you, the facility was like always still got to do this here, still got to
Yeah.
tick the box. And you and I had conversations about different strategies and different things going on, and it just never really materialized for a few months. Few back and forths with different places, nothing came. And then a few months ago, you messaged me, seen this location, went and looked at it. What do you think? And I was like, right, this feels right.
Yeah.
So what's the journey been like since that day? How have you managed to deal with all of the, running the business and opening the facility at the same time?
So I actually wanted to point out that I remember going between whether I wanted to. So I was coaching. There was only a certain amount of clients that I could take on in person because my hours were limited to working around someone else. So I did do online coaching as well, and I kind of did them both simultaneously. And I remember being confused for a while about which one I was going to step forward with. It was actually like around the time of the summit.
Yeah.
That's where I was at, that I was like, what am I going to take forward here? I had seen 2 facilities before that. They both fell through, which I'm very grateful they did. Because it wouldn't have worked now looking back. But I came to kind of a roadblock of what one am I going to go all in on, or what one am I going to focus on? And online, I think it was a great idea, because to me, I was like, I can do this from anywhere. So again, I'm 30 now, so I was thinking about my future, and if I have a family, that'll allow me to be able to work, and that was always still in the back of my mind too. But I'd had a couple of conversations, and I remember actually speaking to Phil Brady about it, and he was like, you're an in-person coach. Like, you are an in-person coach, and I get so much more fulfillment out of being around the girls and bigging them up and seeing them, that it almost felt like if I had been online, it was almost just what I was doing before, except like if I was sitting behind my desk all day, I'm still in the room all day. So I had toyed back and forth with both, and then I decided to go all in, and I actually signed up to the mastermind. And we were like, at that point, once I went to the summit, I signed up to the mastermind, and you were like, right, 90-day goal, what's happening? What are you thinking? And I was like, I'm gonna go facility. This is what we're gonna do. And we sat down, wrote out the goals. And I remember towards the end of last year, well, towards the last quarter of last year, again, with everything that was going on in my life, I was really struggling. I was like, facility just has to go on the back burner. And then something just popped up at the perfect time towards the end of the year. And it was within our 90 days too, I think, of the goal. So it took a bit of time for all of that to go through. Probably like, I think a good 6 weeks before that was finalized. And then I had went to see it. The location was great. I had always said that I would love to work in the Murray because it was so convenient and everything just felt so weirdly right and comfortable. I always find with me, anything that is meant to be is never difficult.
Yeah.
When I got my house, it was, you know, people say like moving house is stressful and getting the house and the sale is so stressful. It was easy. The same way, it was very easy. But then when things don't seem to be right, there's so much resistance with it. Yeah. So it was easy with this that I was like, I feel like this is right. And yeah, then we just kind of went all in on it. It took a while for the contract to go through. And it's been a whirlwind ever since. And
the opening date is when?
The 6th of March. So not this Monday, but the following Monday. And honestly, I feel like I don't have a minute to breathe. I'm trying to balance coaching, getting ready to open, and just trying to do business on the back end. But it's weird that it's still so fulfilling. Like, I love it so much.
Yeah.
Talked to me last night, it was 9 o'clock, and he was like, right, laptop away, enough is enough. And I was like, okay, right, you're right. Yeah, so sick of
unreal. And so you kind of specializing in working with females, but it's actually not your generic female fat loss stuff, if we want to call it that.
Yeah.
So the name of the facility is Empowered. Tell us a wee bit how this came about. So I actually fell into strength training, and I was starting to struggle with a lot of females do. I was starting to struggle with kind of my appearance and my confidence and my relationship with food. And I started to develop an eating disorder. And then I found strength training, which I found really helped improve my relationship with food for a good while, because I started seeing it a bit differently, and I need food to be fuel. And if I want to be strong, then I need to fuel myself. But I've probably trained for around 10 years, and that was maybe like the first year of training. And after that, I just kept seeing how women come into the fitness industry, and even women who don't have any previous struggles with food, but 90% of them leave with a poor relationship with food. It's almost like fitness isn't helping them, it's hurting them. And I just kept seeing it unfold, in this obsession with your appearance and your body and never being good enough. And it's the same with me. I was always trying to make myself smaller, this small version of myself. And it just got to the point where I just felt like I can't sit and watch this. And I was a victim of it, but also enabled it,
because I remember distinctly, like, me whenever I was in like peak training and uploading a before and after picture of myself and being like, this was so easy to get here. Like, I just track my calories, like just track my steps, all good. And when I look back, and at the time, that's what I believed. I wasn't eating dinner. I was having like a protein shake for my dinner. I was getting up at 6 a.m. and making sure I got my 10K steps before I worked a full-time job. I was training 5 days a week. And I was like, that's not enhancing your life, but you almost feel like it is.
Yeah.
And to me, that's not what the fitness industry should be. But I keep seeing people coming into the fitness industry and being left worse off than when they come in. And I remember that's one thing that you've always said to us, like, always leave people better than when you find them. It's the key thing that I stand by as well. I want me to be able to enhance people's lives and make it better and make them a better version of themselves, not just a smaller version of themselves. And I have went through so many struggles in my life, and I feel like training and strength training has always been a constant, and it's been so empowering. So you can, if you do a good session and you leave the gym and you're like, I can do anything, I can conquer the world, it doesn't matter. And that's what I wanted to teach people and transfer on to people. And yes, I'm not against weight loss. There are many of my clients who come to me and they're like, I want to lose weight. Cool. Why is my first question, to make sure that we're on the same page and people are doing things for the right reasons. But also teaching people that weight loss is probably not going to make you happy. So if someone comes and they're unhappy and they're like, I want to lose weight, well, it's not going to bring you this sense of happiness that you're craving. And I just felt like it was such a good space to be able to teach people something different, because it's like, come to my gym, I'll make you can lose 10 pounds and be so happy. And I'm like, that's bullshit, because they're probably just gonna still be as unhappy, maybe not more, and be more self-obsessed.
Yeah, got it.
And backpacking and all that. So it was much more for me about empowering women to be the best version of themselves and not have to feed into all of the bullshit that the fitness industry sells.
Yeah. So that would be the message to, I say, general population, right? So let's say the average woman who is not a fitness professional, who let's face it, probably doesn't really enjoy going to the gym, but they want to have a better, they want to have more confidence, they want to have a better relationship with themselves. And it's a great message. On the flip side of that, so I've seen this here, a trend over the last couple of years is that there's more and more females making their way into the fitness industry. So whenever we first started delivering courses, which was 7 years ago now, the ratio was about 80-20 on our first couple of courses. So it was 80% males and about 20% females. On the last, I would say actually more, maybe the last 6 courses that we have delivered, it's been like a 50-50 ratio. At one time I looked around and there was actually more females on the course than what there was males. So so with that as well, and I know traditionally it was a very male dominant industry, personal training was. What are some of the, let's say, pitfalls that young females are, like, let's say, susceptible to moving into the fitness industry? Because if we're being honest, right, if you look at social media, it portrays the industry, I feel, in a bad light, and it gives people kind of the wrong sense of what it's really all about, right? Is like a lot of influencers will be associated with the fitness industry, and they make they might see that, and their perception is, well, I have to look a certain way in order to get a certain amount of followers in order to have a successful fitness business. So what are some of the things that you see young females need to look out for, young female fitness professionals? And what would your advice be to them on as a whole?
Such a good question. My big thing is that I've said this before, but if no PT comes into the fitness industry and doesn't have issues, so you don't just be like, I've loved myself all my life and everything's great. There is something that stems from somewhere, that you've been through something that makes you be like, you know what, I want to help other people in this way. For the most people, some people maybe just get into it and think this is easy and whatever. But for the bulk of people, I think it's very much they have issues, had issues. The problem is that a lot of the people can come into the industry when they're still in the crux of the issues. So whenever I talk about myself in terms of, I know like a question you've asked or a question people have asked me before is like, do you regret not doing it sooner? And I'm like, absolutely not, because I feel like I would have done people damage. If I had have got into the fitness industry way back when I started getting into training, I would have took all my issues and transferred them onto other people. So you need to do, maybe some people, like some females who get into the industry aren't even aware, you know, that they're in the crux of it, that they're, I've heard of like women handing out other women like 1,200 calorie diets, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like you can't do that. So I think that's a big thing to make sure you're in the best mind frame yourself before you start taking other people's health, physical and mental health, into your hands, because you're their coach. They look up to you. You're a respected professional in their eyes. They trust you, and a lot of the people aren't ready to be in that position. So I think that's first and foremost. I think another big thing is, like you were saying about the influencers and the followers and things like that, which I but the followers don't mean shit. So I also, whenever I started social media, felt a bit scunnered talking on my stories and stuff, and I don't even have much followers. And I remember actually doing I worked with like a government body that helps you build your business, and we did a business plan, and one of the goals was to get me to 5k followers. Right. That wasn't my goal. He had wrote that on as a goal for me without me agreeing to it. So whenever I reread the business plan, I was like, fuck. So I think it is associated that you need to have a certain amount of followers to do well. And it's just shit, because it doesn't make a difference. I would much rather have 300 people who I'm adding value to, who are seeing my stuff and going, that's really helped me, than having 10k people who scroll past your shit or don't care. Yeah. And I think you can get very fixated on the whole Instagram thing, and I think a lot of people use it, actually, especially women influencer vibes. It's just for validation. Where here, I actually remember, so there's a boy who I'm friends with, and he had said to me, he's also a coach, and he had said, one of the reasons I really like you is because you don't get your arse out for Instagram. And I was like, what? But I don't post like half naked pictures to get attention on Instagram, because I'm not trying to attract men onto my Instagram, and that's all that's going to attract. Yeah. If someone follows me and it's a man and I don't know them, I'm like, oh, fuck's sake, that's not a potential customer, so I don't want you there. So as I watch my Instagram grow, my ratio of male to female followers, the male followers keep going down and the female keeps going up, which for a lot of influencers, that wouldn't happen because it's just men on perving at your stuff.
Yeah,
So at least I know that I'm adding value.
it's good metric.
My target audience, rather than as the men unfollow me, I'm like, bye, see ya.
Yeah.
I don't want you here. Yeah, and I think the other thing is you can get into fitness and think it's going to be easy, and it's really fucking hard work, but it's also incredibly fulfilling if that is your drive, if that is your goal. You can change lives and help people. So yeah, I think that's the main things of advice that I would give. Probably not care about, put less attention in the following and all of that side of things. Another big one actually is stop caring what other people think. The amount of conversations that I've had with people that they're like, I don't want to post on my stories because people will be like, who does she think so like, if someone thinks, who does she think she is? I mean, who cares? And you can't dictate your life or your business around what other people may or may not have to say about it.
Yeah, agreed. Christina, I'm aware that we have taken up a lot of your time today, so thank you for it. Before we wrap it up here, if anyone wants to connect with you, where can they find you?
On Instagram at Empowered Belfast. Primarily.
Unreal. If there was a question that I should have asked you but didn't, what would it have been?
Oh my gosh. I think what do you regret, or like what would you change is always a good question.
Would you have changed anything about the process?
I really, really wouldn't. I do believe that everything, when I reflect back, has happened at the right time, although maybe at the time I've wanted things to be faster, I've wanted things to be different. Everything always falls into place, and looking back you're like, that's why that happened, how it happened. And so yeah.
Nice. Thank you, Christina. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.